Chapter 101. The Big Fish Takes the Bait. Yishi paused for a moment as she watched Ling Yuan step out of the room. Ling Yuan, you'll remain at Frost Snow Pavilion this time, she said. Having Shilong with me is enough, Ling Yuan replied. He stopped, glanced at Shilong, and gave a slight nod. Understood, young miss. With Ling Yuan's agreement, he found a random spot to sit. Yishi led Shilong out of Frost Snow Pavilion, and they headed toward the Tiando Royal Palace. Shilong, did the young lord tell you about registering with Frost Snow Pavilion? Yishi asked as they walked through the bustling street. Yes, he did, Shilong answered softly, keeping about half a step behind her. Nominally, you'll be an elder of Frost Snow Pavilion now, with the same status as Ling Yuan. For everything else, act as you see fit. Yishi produced a token from her storage bracelet, pure white with Frost Snow engraved on the back and a black wing on the front. It was the pavilion's token, a mark of status. Only 5 people held one: Ye Qingshe of the Nineheart Begonia family, Yang Wudi of the Breaking Clan, Niu Gao of the Defense Clan, Poison Douluo Dugu Bo, and Ling Yuan. Yishi handed the token to Shilong, who tucked it away immediately. They soon reached the gate of the Tiando Royal Palace. The palace guards stepped aside the moment they recognized Yishi, but their gazes lingered on Shilong. Everyone in heaven. Du City knew Yishi usually traveled with Ling Yuan. Today's companion was a stranger, a middle-aged man they had never seen with her before. Yishi ignored the scrutiny and walked straight into the palace, Shilong close behind. When they arrived at the Crown Prince's residence, a guard approached. Young Miss Yishi, His Highness the Crown Prince is currently not in the palace. He has gone to His Majesty's residence and should return shortly. You may wait here. I will send word to His Highness immediately. Yishi inclined her head and entered the Crown Prince's palace with Shilong. The guard sent a messenger to inform Crown Prince Shui Qinghe. In Emperor Shui's study, Shui Qinghe stood respectfully while the emperor spoke. The guard's report reached them. Your Majesty, Your Highness the Crown Prince, Pavilion Master Yishi has arrived and is waiting in the Crown Prince's palace. Hearing Yishi's name brought a soft smile to Shui Qinghe's face. Emperor Shui noticed the expression and couldn't help but wonder. Shui Qinghe had always been composed. Why did he look so pleased at merely hearing Yishi's name? Emperor Shui did not speak his doubts. Instead, he waved a hand. Shui Qinghe, since Yishi has arrived, go see if she needs anything. Report back to me, no matter what you find. Shui Qinghe bowed. Yes, Imperial Father, he said, then left the study. After Shui Qinghe departed, Emperor Shui sat and thought for a moment, replaying the look of happiness on his son's face. Then he rose and called to a guard at the study door. Go to the Crown Prince's palace and observe the interaction between the Crown Prince and Pavilion Master Ye. Report directly to me, whatever happens. Yes, Your Majesty, the guard replied and left. Back at the Crown Prince's palace, Shui Qinghe's lips curved into a smile as he sensed someone following him. The fish has taken the bait, he murmured, though his steps never faltered. He had expected it might take several tries before Emperor Shui would take the bait, but it had been that easy. One glimpse, one fleeting expression, and the emperor had sent someone to watch. Shui Qinghe approached Yishi, who sat calmly eating pastries. He gave her a quick wink to convey his success, then moved closer. Yishi met his wink and understood. The big fish has taken the bait, she thought, setting her pastry down. She smoothed her expression into a pleasant smile and rose. Shui Qinghe. Her voice was like a clear bell. Shui Qinghe returned her greeting softly. Xiaoxi, what brings you to the Tiando Royal Palace? Though it was a casual question, both of them glanced, subtly, toward the direction of the door. Chapter 102. Support from Emperor Shui. Yishi reached for Shui Qinghe's arm and hugged it, the movement casual but intimate. It gets a little boring staying in Frost Snow Pavilion all the time, she said, smiling. So I thought I'd come, keep Shui Qinghe company. Shilong watched them with a cramped feeling, his eyes drifting up to the palace ceiling, as if he were trying to look past the display. He didn't know what plan Yishi and Chan Renshui were putting into action, but from their closeness and the way they acted, it was obvious something important was brewing. And someone was likely about to be put in a dangerous position. Outside the palace, a guard had been peeking through the partly open door. He could see what was happening inside and carefully kept observing, already thinking about how he would report it to Emperor Shuiye. After a brief conversation, Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe strolled through Tiando Royal Palace together. Their every move conveyed intimacy. They laughed softly and spoke in low tones. Shilong trailed not far behind, often looking away as if uninterested, while the hidden guard shadowing them watched their every action with meticulous attention. They walked until they reached the palace garden and sat among the blooming flowers, admiring them. Once the guard was satisfied he'd seen enough, he slipped away to report to the emperor. "Young lord, young miss," Shilong said into his transmission, "the person in the shadows has left." Shilong briefly glanced in the direction the guard had taken, then relayed the information. Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe only nodded slightly and resumed admiring the blooms. A soft breeze stirred the flowers and their hair. They exchanged a look, their smiles faint and knowing, and then both glanced deliberately toward where Emperor Shuiye might be, their silence saying everything that needed to be said. Meanwhile, in the emperor's study, Emperor Shuiye listened to the guard's report in disbelief. "You mean the crown prince and pavilion master Ye were being intimate?" he asked, struggling to believe it. "Are you sure you didn't misinterpret what you saw?" The guard dropped to one knee, voice steady. "Your Majesty, I stake my life on every word I've said." The emperor fell quiet, thinking it over. Then, unable to leave matters uncertain, he rose. "Where are they now? I'll go see for myself." His step showed no hesitation. "They're in the garden, Your Majesty," the guard said, standing to lead the way. Emperor Shuiye waved him off. He would go alone. When he arrived at the garden and saw Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe seated there, he did not reveal himself. He melted into the shadows and watched. Shilong had already sensed the emperor's presence and reported it. Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe did not alter their behavior. They continued to admire the flowers and chat as if nothing had changed. Ye Shi leaned slightly against Shui Qinghe, smiling, amusement bright in her blue eyes. Emperor Shuiye's initial skepticism dissolved into stunned surprise. Up close, the scene left no room for doubt. Then Shui Qinghe reached out and lifted Ye Shi into his lap, cradling her at the waist and gently running a hand through her hair. The emperor's eyes widened. This was more than mere friendly intimacy. Frost Snow Pavilion now held an influential position in Heaven-Do City. Pavilion Master Ye commanded respect, even from the emperor. For the crown prince to embrace her so openly in the royal palace, unless it was a show of disrespect, which should have provoked an immediate response from her protector, this suggested something deliberate. Ling Yuan, Ye Shi's usual guard, was not present this time, but whoever was accompanying her would not be weak. Eliminating the impossible, the emperor narrowed the possibilities in his mind. Ye Shi's face flushed faintly. She looked momentarily surprised, and her stunned expression gave a startling realism to the act. Shilong, watching closely from nearby, admired their performance inwardly. This felt authentic. In truth, Ye Shi hadn't anticipated Shui Qinghe's sudden move, and her blush was genuine. Shui Qinghe stroked Ye Shi's hair, then shot a quick, subtle look at Shilong. Shilong caught the cue and understood immediately. He turned his head toward the shadows where the emperor was hiding. "Who's there?" he called out loudly. "Come out!" Ye Shi sprang up from Shui Qinghe's lap the moment Shilong shouted, her blue eyes following his gaze. Shui Qinghe rose too and looked toward the hiding place. Emperor Shuiye coughed lightly and stepped out from the foliage, putting on an air of casualness. "Just passing by," he said, as if he had only stumbled upon them by accident. Chapter 103. I have high hopes for you. Greetings, Father Emperor. Greetings, Your Majesty. Shui Qinghe and Ye Shi bowed in unison as Emperor Shuiye stepped out of the shadows. Shui Qinghe's expression was a little awkward, as if a small secret had been discovered. Ye Shi's cheeks were slightly flushed. She kept her head lowered, though her clear blue eyes kept flicking toward the emperor. Emperor Shuiye smiled and waved them to rise. "Xiaoxi, you don't need to be so formal." His voice was unexpectedly gentle, and his gaze appraised Ye Shi. From what he'd just seen and from Ye Shi's shy behavior, he was already 80% sure of what was going on. The remaining 20% he could confirm with Shui Qinghe in private. "Thank you, Your Majesty," Ye Shi replied, every word and gesture showing deference. "Xiaoxi, where's Spirit Kite today?" the emperor asked softly, then looked at the figure beside her. "And who is?" This is Shilong, an elder of the Frost Snow Pavilion, Yeshi said, stepping to Shilong's side. Spirit Kite had to go out and won't be back for a few days. In the meantime, Elder Shilong will take over Spirit Kite's duties protecting me. Emperor Shuye nodded and turned to Shilong. Elder Shilong? Shilong only gave a slight nod, composed and natural. Yeshi didn't add more, but a delicate smile lit her face. Another titled Douluo, the emperor murmured to himself. Including Spirit Kite and Dugubo, the Frost Snow Pavilion now had 3 titled Douluo in the open: Spirit Kite, Dugubo, and Shilong. Yang Wudi, as head of the hall, also possessed strength comparable to a titled Douluo. From an obvious standpoint, that was roughly 4 titled Douluos worth of power. The 7 treasure glazed tile school, on the other hand, boasted Sword Douluo Chen Xin and Bone Douluo Gu Rong as its main pillars. With Ning Fengji's assistance, they could unleash force comparable to 4 titled Douluo as well. Ye Qingxue, like Ning Fengji, was a supportive spirit saint. Her specialty was healing, while Ning's specialty was amplification. In a head-to-head on pure combat capability, the Frost Snow Pavilion held an advantage because its 9-heart begonia spirit could instantly heal all injuries, which mattered greatly in a protracted fight. Yet in overall strength, considering history, resources, and stability, the 7 treasure glazed tile schools still had the edge. The Frost Snow Pavilion had only been established a few years and couldn't match that. After weighing everything, Emperor Shuye felt the two were roughly on par. The pavilion's real strength lay in its younger generation. Its renowned youth were already acknowledged talents in Heaven Do City. Seeing the Emperor's shifting gaze, Yeshi stepped forward and bowed again. Your Majesty, I just remembered some matters at the Frost Snow Pavilion that need handling. I'll return there now. Her voice was respectful, but when she spoke, she glanced at Shui Qinghe, an unspoken emotion flickering in her eyes. Emperor Shuye followed her look and fixed his own gaze on Shui Qinghe. If you have the time, come to the palace often. If anything is difficult, seek out Shui Qinghe, the emperor said kindly. I will, whenever I can, Yeshi replied, then gave Shui Qinghe a playful wink before turning and heading for the palace exit. Shilong cast one quick glance at the emperor, then followed her. Shui Qinghe watched her go, a smile slowly spreading over his face as his eyes stayed on her retreating figure. When she had gone a fair distance, Emperor Shuye lightly patted Shui Qinghe's shoulder. Qinghe, stop staring. She's gone. Father Emperor, I didn't. Shui Qinghe stammered, snapping back to himself. No need to explain. The emperor cut in with a chuckle. Come with me. They walked through the Tiando royal palace toward the study. Emperor Shuye's hands clasped behind his back. After a moment, he asked, casual but probing, Qinghe, when did you and Yeshi get so close? Father Emperor, Xiaoxi and I are just ordinary friends, Shui Qinghe said too quickly, waving a hand. His eyes, though, were evasive. Ordinary friends who hug and embrace in the garden? The emperor teased. I saw it all. Emperor Shuye grew serious. When Yeshi founded the Frost Snow Pavilion, I told you to work to make her your crown princess. If you mean it, act quickly, he went on. The early bird catches the worm. The Frost Snow Pavilion has great potential. If she becomes your crown princess, it would be wholly beneficial. If not, don't force things. I understand, Father Emperor, Shui Qinghe said, watching the smile that crossed the emperor's face before settling into a thoughtful look. Emperor Shuye said nothing more. They walked on in silence toward the study, the older man's advice lingering in the air. Chapter 104, A Sudden Gift. Back in the study, Emperor Shuye sat on the main seat while Shui Qinghe stood respectfully behind him. Qinghe, what have you decided? He asked. Shui Qinghe fell into thought instead of answering right away. The emperor did not press him and waited in silence. After a long moment, Qinghe seemed to reach a decision and stepped forward. Imperial Father, I will do my best. His voice was steady and resolute. Emperor Shuye nodded. I can see that Ye Shi still cares for you. Don't be too hasty. She's young. Let things develop slowly. Then the emperor's expression shifted, as if he'd had another idea. Qinghe, go to the royal treasury after this and pick out some gifts. Bring them to Frost Snow Pavilion this afternoon, and arrange for some of the royal family's resources to be directed toward Frost Snow Pavilion as well. A faint smile crossed the emperor's face. From what he had seen in the garden, if Qinghe worked at it, success was likely. If they succeeded, the Heaven Dew royal family would gain the entire Frost Snow Pavilion and an exceptionally talented crown princess. The resources sent out would circulate and eventually benefit the royal family. They could also sever or lessen their ties with the 7 treasure glazed tile school. Even if the scheme failed, the aid would only deepen ties with Frost Snow Pavilion, which could be called upon in future troubles. In any case, it was a win. Yes, Imperial Father, Shui Qinghe replied. He kept his face calm, but inwardly he was pleased. The royal treasury held many treasures, and from the Emperor's tone, it sounded like opportunities to enter it might increase. That meant frequent chances to take items for Yexi's Frost Snow Pavilion. A bit of showmanship will let me take some from the treasury and secure a channel of resources. This is not a loss. He also planned to edge the 7 treasure glazed tile school out of the royal family's circle slowly, step by step. Emperor Shuiye waved lightly. Go and prepare. Qinghe bowed and left the study, but he didn't return to his own palace. He headed straight to the royal treasury. The treasury had 4 floors. The higher the floor, the rarer the treasures. On the 4th floor, Qinghe studied the displays and selected items carefully. This will be perfect. Xiaoxi should like it. This one's pretty. She can display it in her room. This too. She'll love it. He moved through the exhibits, plucking out suitable pieces. About 2 hours later, he had circled the 4th floor and stored his chosen items in his spirit tool. He had considered taking more, but decided not to. This had to be done gradually. If he tried to take everything at once, it would draw attention. Better to make a steady stream of transfers over time. Leaving the royal treasury, Shui Qinghe checked the time. It was already afternoon. He set off for Frost Snow Pavilion in a brisk stride. At Frost Snow Pavilion, in the back hall, Yexi sat at a stone table. 2 titled Douluo, Ling Yuan and Ghost Leopard, stood behind her on either side. Shilong stood before her. Shilong, stay at Frost Snow Pavilion for the next few days, Yexi said, casually popping a pastry into her mouth and savoring it. After that, return to Tiando Royal Palace and protect my sister. Yes, young miss, Shilong replied promptly, patting his chest. Yexi turned to Ling Yuan. Ling Yuan, lay low in Heaven Do City for a while. Don't show yourself until Shilong has returned to the palace. I understand, young miss, Ling Yuan answered with a gentle nod. Satisfied, Yexi fell quiet and looked toward Tiando Royal Palace, waiting for news of Qian Renshui's result. Time passed slowly until Zhang Meng, the maid, entered and bowed. Young miss, His Highness the Crown Prince has arrived. Yexi acknowledged the announcement, rose from her seat, and walked toward the main hall. Ling Yuan, Ghost Leopard, and Shilong remained where they were. In the main hall, Yexi found Shui Qinghe already seated. She crossed the room and sat down opposite him. How did it go? She asked quietly. Shui Qinghe smiled mysteriously and pointed toward the back hall. Yexi understood immediately, stood, and headed back. Qinghe rose and followed without hesitation. They walked together to Yexi's room and sat on the bed. A faint golden light gathered around Shui Qinghe's body, and he shifted, his features smoothing and changing until he wore the appearance of Qian Renshui. Xiaoxi, Qian Renshui said softly, things went much more smoothly than we expected. Now we just need to steady the situation. It's unlikely anything will change the outcome. She produced the gifts from her spirit tool and set them out. These are what I picked from the royal treasury. What do you think? Do you like them? A smile bloomed on Qian Renshui's face as her golden eyes regarded Yexi quietly. Chapter 105, Leave Notice. I have to travel back to my hometown by car tomorrow for New Year's, so I may not be able to update on time. If I can't update, Mortal World will add extra chapters later to make up for it. There are still 17 days until New Year's, and Mortal World wishes all readers an early, Happy New Year. Chapter 105, Testing Strength. When Qian Renshui set the gifts out, Yexi's azure eyes lit up. As Pavilion Master of Frost Snow Pavilion, she had seen countless treasures, but each item Qian Renshui revealed felt priceless. I like them, she said with a bright smile, simple and direct. No one ever considered themselves too rich, and Yexi was no exception. As long as you like them, Qian Renshui replied, scooping Yexi into her lap with an indulgent look. There are plenty more in the royal treasury. We can take our time. If we take them too often, what about Emperor Shuiye? Ye teased from Qian Renshui's embrace, a hint of hesitation flickering in her eyes. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Ye voice was calm, but when Qian Renshui leaned closer and murmured, Emperor Shuiye has decided to prioritize Frost Snow Pavilion with all the resources the Heaven Do royal family can provide. The warm breath against Ye ear made her cheeks flush. Qian Renshui watched the color rise in Ye face and thought she looked irresistibly cute. Xiaoxi, are you that sensitive? She murmured, fingers threading through Ye hair like she was handling something precious. The door opened then, and Tian Yao hurried in. Second, miss. She stopped mid-sentence when both Qian Renshui and Ye glanced up. Under their scrutiny, Tian Yao's voice died away, but her eyes lingered on Ye reddened cheeks. Young lord. Second, miss, she added quickly, then blurted, I didn't see anything, nodded with exaggerated earnestness, and turned to leave, closing the door behind her. Ye blinked, bewildered. What did I didn't see anything mean? It sounded as if she'd interrupted something scandalous. She and Qian Renshui exchanged puzzled looks. There was nothing amiss. Why the awkwardness? I'll go check, Ye said after a moment, sliding off Qian Renshui's lap and smoothing the creases from her clothes. Tian Yao came to find me. Maybe there's something important. Go ahead, Qian Renshui said, nodding, then reclined on Ye bed. Outside the room, Ye stepped out to find Tian Yao waiting. Second, miss, why did you come out? Tian Yao asked, surprised to see her. What do you mean? Why did I come out? Ye replied, equally puzzled. I came to ask what you wanted when you came to find me just now. It's nothing, Tian Yao waved at first, then spoke more seriously. It's just that Yan Yan and Ling Ling's strength has improved a lot recently, so we thought we should find someone to test them. Her eyes flicked to Ye as she said it, the implication clear. You want me to test their strength? Ye asked, and though it sounded like a question, the certainty in her tone left no doubt. That's right, Tian Yao confirmed. It'll be a good chance for you to stretch your muscles. Ye nodded and followed Tian Yao through the corridors to the sparring ground in the back hall. On the open field, Du Guyan and Ye Lingling already stood waiting. Du Guyan greeted Ye with a bright smile. Ye Lingling remained composed but inclined her head slightly. Ye stopped a short distance away while Tian Yao joined Du Guyan's side. You can go all out, Ye said. Ling Ling can heal us afterwards, so don't worry about injuries. Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling exchanged glances and then nodded together. They released their spirits. Behind Tian Yao, the golden crocodile king spirit manifested. Behind Du Guyan, the Bailin snake spirit appeared. 4 spirit rings, 2 yellow and 2 purple, glowed beneath each of them. Ye Lingling extended her hands, and the 9-heart begonia spirit floated into her palm, a matching set of spirit rings appearing at her feet. 3 spirit ancestors stood before Ye, an attack system, a control system, and a support system. Ye gaze swept over all 3 and rested on Ye Lingling. She had no intention of releasing her own spirit. A 1 against 3 without spirit help was still pressured when facing 3 spirit ancestors of equal rank. In that trio, however, Ye Lingling, the support, was the weakest in combat and therefore the most likely breakthrough point. Ye moved first, closing the distance straight toward Tian Yao. Tian Yao met her charge head-on. Du Guyan, the control system, positioned herself near Ye Lingling, monitoring the duel closely. Ye fist met Tian Yao's with a thunderous impact that rattled through both their arms. Ye body wobbled slightly. Tian Yao staggered back 2 steps. Ye shook the numbness out of her arm, but did not break eye contact with Ye Lingling. Tian Yao's brow tightened as she felt the sting in her arm, and her expression sharpened, readying herself for the next exchange. Chapter 107, 1 versus 3, use support first. The first spirit ring at Ye Lingling's feet flared, and a soft light wrapped around Tian Yao, instantly restoring her aching arm. Tian Yao shot Ye Lingling a quick look and then moved to intercept Ye. As Tian Yao advanced, Ye pivoted, dodging the attack and swinging her leg in a high sweep. With years of combat experience, Tian Yao brought her forearms together to block. The blow was powerful. Although it was stopped, the force shoved Tian Yao backward. Ye didn't press the advantage. Instead, she flashed toward Ye Lingling. In a 1 against 3 situation, the support is always the first target, especially one who can heal. The longer the fight lasted, the worse it would be for Ye. Xiaoxi, don't forget about me, Du Guyan called, stepping in front of Ye Lingling. She raised onto her toes, spun, and whipped out a long, straight leg toward Ye. Ye leaned back to avoid Du Guyan's strike, and while evading, countered. Her hand clenched into a fist and struck Du Guyan's shoulder. The hit made Du Guyan emit a muffled groan. She staggered and nearly fell. Ye slipped past Du Guyan toward Ye Lingling. Glancing at Tian Yao and Du Guyan's positions, Ye Lingling didn't hesitate. She lifted her nine-heart begonia spirit, and the second spirit ring at her feet flashed. A healing light shot from the begonia, landing on Du Guyan and knitting her wounds. As Ye raised her hand to strike, she noticed Ye Lingling wasn't dodging. She was still healing. The reason was simple. Ye Lingling had sparred so often with Tian Yao and Du Guyan that she trusted their coordination. She believed Tian Yao would stop Yexi's attack. Even if Tian Yao failed, Ye Lingling knew Ye wouldn't truly injure them. Ye always controlled her strength in practice bouts. Just then, a gust of wind blew against Ye from behind. She cut off her attack, retreated, and braced to block. A poisonous mist swirled around her, Du Guyan's Bailin snake poison. A blood-red light erupted behind her as the eight-winged slaughter angel spirit manifested on her back. One yellow, two purple, and one black spirit ring flickered beneath her feet. First spirit ability, Blood Soul Blessing, Ye declared. The first ring under Ye flared, a hazy blood-red glow enveloping her. Blood Soul Blessing wasn't offensive. Its strength lay in granting immunity to all negative statuses. With it active, Ye no longer had to worry about the Bailin poison. Du Guyan managed only a helpless smile. Her biggest tool, poison control, had been neutralized. As a control-type spirit ancestor, she relied on status effects. Without them, it was down to close combat. Tian Yao attacked first, Du Guyan followed, and Ye Lingling kept watching the field, ready to heal at a moment's notice. Ye grabbed Tian Yao's swinging fist, twisted her body, and swept a leg into Du Guyan's abdomen. Du Guyan flew back into Ye Lingling. Both cried out and hit the ground. Ye yanked Tian Yao forward and raised her knee to finish the move, but then she stopped. She lowered her leg and smiled. Good cooperation, she said. Especially Ye Lingling, you didn't dodge my attack. You trusted your teammates to block. Ye Lingling returned a polite smile and nodded. Ye retracted her spirit. Tian Yao, Yan Yan, well done, Ye continued, her azure eyes warm. I can clearly feel your improvement. Du Guyan grinned and sauntered over to loop an arm through Ye Xiaoxi, I have a question, she said, blinking with curiosity. How strong are you exactly? What's your limit? Ye considered the question for a moment, then answered seriously. I can handle an ordinary spirit emperor without much trouble. My strength is comparable to a spirit saint, though against a true spirit saint, the outcome could go either way. She explained why confidently. Though technically a spirit ancestor, her spirit ring array was unusually well-rounded, leaving almost no glaring weakness. She was absorbing rings above her rank, had followed a body-tempering path since childhood, and possessed a powerful external spirit bone. All of that made her far stronger than most of her rank. If push came to shove, she could use every trump card, including her divine artifact, the Slaughter Sword. Comparable to a spirit saint? Du Guyan's eyes widened in admiration. Ye Lingling's expression remained composed, but the look in her eyes mirrored Du Guyan's. She, too, felt genuine admiration for Ye. Chapter 108, Yu Tianheng's Arrival. Ye smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, her azure eyes cool and detached. Right now, among the younger generation, my strength ranks near the top. At least for now, aside from my sister, I haven't met anyone who can match me. Her tone was matter-of-fact, brimming with confidence. In the younger ranks of the city, unless Qian Renshui revealed herself, Ye was effectively the ceiling of the prodigies. Tian Yao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling exchanged looks and nodded. If anyone else had said those words, they'd have argued or challenged her to a match to test the claim. Pride ran deep among Heaven-Do City's young talents. But coming from Ye, it felt natural and undeniable. Her power was plain to see. Even without releasing her spirit, her physical body alone could defeat most peers, and with her spirit unleashed, cross-realm combat became routine. No one in their generation had ever forced her to show her full strength. Respect and admiration warmed their expressions. When you train, remember to balance work and rest, Tian Hao said. I still have time, so I'll head back first, Ye Shi replied after glancing at the three of them, then strode toward her room. We know. Tian Hao nodded. Shi Duguyan and Ye Lingling watched Ye Shi go. Only when Ye Shi had disappeared did Duguyan relax and smile faintly. Let's rest a while, then continue training. We may not catch up to her overnight, but we can't fall too far behind. They moved toward a nearby pavilion to rest. In Ye Shi's room, Qian Renshui, lying on the bed with her eyes closed, sat up as Ye Shi entered, already watching the doorway. Xiaoxi, what did Tian Hao want? It's nothing major. Ye Shi flopped down on the bed. Tian Hao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling say their strength has grown a lot recently and wanted me to spar with them. And the result? Qian Renshui's gaze roved over Ye Shi. Though she asked, she already knew the answer. She hadn't formally sparred with Ye Shi, but she understood her sister's capabilities. Of course I won, Ye Shi said casually, but they have improved quite a bit. Qian Renshui reached out and rested a hand on Ye Shi's shoulder, leaning close so their faces were near. They smiled at each other. Xiaoxi, about Tiando Royal Palace. She didn't finish, but Ye Shi understood. I'll go to Tiando Royal Palace often, she promised, leaning against Qian Renshui. Qian Renshui nodded, and they continued talking as time passed. A few hours later, Qian Renshui checked the time and rose. It's about time. I should return to Tiando Royal Palace. A faint glow wrapped her, and she shifted outwardly back into the guise of Shui Qinghe. Ye Shi stood and accompanied her. They walked along the bluestone path to Frost Snow Pavilion's main hall and chatted briefly there. At the entrance, Shui Qinghe took her leave, and Ye Shi escorted her to the street before turning to head back. Just then a voice called from behind. Ye Shi, wait a moment. She paused and turned to see Yu Tianheng approaching, wearing a luxurious blue robe and a friendly smile. Yu Tianheng? Are you here to look for Yan Yan again? He asked as he drew near. No, Ye Shi shook her head. Not this time. I came to see you, he said, stopping at her side with that handsome smile. Ye Shi appraised him for a moment, then gestured toward the pavilion. Come in and talk. Inside the main hall, she took the main seat, and Yu Tianheng sat in a guest chair. Ye Shi rested her hand against her head and looked down at him with measured curiosity. So, what's this about? I've come to give you an invitation. He produced an exquisitely made invitation and set it before her. Our clan chief would like to invite you as a guest to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Ye Shi's brow lifted in mild surprise, but she accepted the invitation and examined it. Chapter 109, Invitation from the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. The invitation itself was ordinary. Nothing about it stood out. Ye Shi set it down and, looking toward Yu Tianheng, asked softly, Why would the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan invite me out of the blue? Yu Tianheng hesitated, thinking for a moment before replying, I don't know the specific reason. I was only sent to deliver the invitation. He spread his hands helplessly, making it clear he had no more information. Ye Shi's eyes returned to the invitation, thoughtful. Since Frost Snow Pavilion was founded, they had had virtually no dealings with the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. The two sides had kept to themselves. Yu Tianheng's sudden delivery of an invitation with no explanation left Ye Shi uneasy. She considered it a while longer as Yu Tianheng waited quietly without interrupting. Finally, she snapped out of her thoughts and looked back at him. I've accepted. We'll visit the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan tomorrow. Yu Tianheng didn't move from his place. His gaze remained fixed on Ye Shi seated in the main chair. When she noticed his reluctance to leave, she asked directly, Is there anything else? He cleared his throat. Where is Yan Yan? It's still early. I wanted to find Yan Yan. Yu Tianheng's eyes shifted toward the back hall. Yan Yan should be training deep in the rear chambers right now. You can go find him yourself. Ye Shi waved him off, signaling for him to hurry. With that, Yu Tianheng rose and headed toward the back hall. After he left, Ye Shi's azure eyes drifted toward the direction of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. I don't know why they suddenly invited me, she murmured to herself, but it shouldn't be anything bad. She rose and walked to Ling Yuan's room. Just as she raised her hand to knock, the door opened and Ling Yuan stepped out. Young miss, she bowed respectfully. Come with me tomorrow to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan, Ye Shi said seriously. Although she didn't expect danger, she wanted Ling Yuan with her for reassurance. She didn't know the clan's intentions. Ling Yuan smiled. "What time shall we go?" "About 9 in the morning," Ye Shi replied. "Understood, young miss." Ling Yuan agreed without hesitation, and Ye Shi turned and walked back to her room. Across town in the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan Hall, Clan Chief Yuan Zhen sat on the main seat, brows knitted as he watched Yu Xiaogang before him. "I've already sent Tianheng to invite the Pavilion Master of Frost Snow Pavilion to visit," Yuan Zhen said, "but I don't agree with the plan you proposed." "Father," Yu Xiaogang began, urgent. "My disciple once saw Ye Shi in Soto City. According to him, Ye Shi's spirit ring arrangement is completely abnormal. It even involves cross-level absorption. If we could obtain the method for cross-level absorption, or if I could research her spirit rings, the benefits to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan would be enormous." Yu Xiaogang's expression was grave and earnest. His words struck at Yuan Zhen's thoughts. "What you say may be true," Yuan Zhen admitted, closing his eyes. "But Ye Shi is the pavilion master of Frost Snow Pavilion. Her position is equal to mine. Why would she reveal the method of cross-level absorption or allow us to study her spirit rings?" He did not look at Yu Xiaogang as he continued. They were barely acquainted with Frost Snow Pavilion. Simply asking for such a thing would be impossible. And as for forcibly studying her rings, Yuan Zhen had no intention of pursuing that line. A smile that didn't reach his eyes flickered across Yu Xiaogang's face. He looked confident. "I have a way." "You have a way?" Yuan Zhen opened his eyes and peered at him. "I can't say yet," Yu Xiaogang replied mysteriously. "You'll see when Ye Shi visits tomorrow." Yuan Zhen scrutinized him in silence for a long moment. The room settled into stillness. Finally, he leaned back and said slowly, "If it's not feasible, we must not force it. Frost Snow Pavilion is subtly stronger than us. We keep to ourselves. If we can avoid offending them, we should." "You have my word," Yu Xiaogang said solemnly. "If it's truly not possible, I will not push it." Yuan Zhen waved him off, indicating he could leave and rest. Yu Xiaogang bowed and left without another word. After the door closed, Yuan Zhen stared toward the direction of Frost Snow Pavilion, a strange expression shadowing his face. "When Tianheng returns, I'll ask him how Ye Shi looked when she received the invitation," he murmured. Chapter 110, Heading to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Yuan Zhen sat in the main seat of the hall, leaning back slightly with his chin propped on his hand and his eyes closed. He rested there, waiting for Yu Tianheng to return. Time crept by. After about 3 hours, the door knocked, and Yu Tianheng's voice called from the doorway. "Grandpa, I'm back from Frost Snow Pavilion." Yuan Zhen's eyes opened slowly. "Tianheng, come in." The door opened, and Yu Tianheng stepped inside. "Grandpa, I delivered the invitation to Frost Snow Pavilion. Ye Shi agreed to visit our Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan tomorrow." Yu Tianheng took a seat and reported Ye Shi's reply in full. "How did she react? Did she ask anything?" Yuan Zhen asked casually. Yu Tianheng described Ye Shi's expression. She had looked very surprised and asked why a clan that usually kept to itself would suddenly invite her as a guest. Yuan Zhen chuckled softly. "Her vigilance is still high. But it's understandable." He smiled faintly. If a force that had no prior dealings with him suddenly extended an invitation, Yuan Zhen thought he would be cautious too. "Tianheng, go back and rest." He glanced at the time and waved Yu Tianheng away. Obediently, Yu Tianheng rose and left the room. The next morning, at Frost Snow Pavilion, Ye Shi sat before a dressing mirror in an antique chamber, wearing a silver palace gown, while her maid Zhang Meng arranged her silver hair. When her hair was smoothed and pinned, Ye Shi rose and moved toward the door. Ling Yuan was already there, waiting quietly. "Let's go. We're heading to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan," Ye Shi said, and led the way with Ling Yuan half a step behind. The walk to the clan was not short. It took them about 40 minutes. When they reached the gate, the disciples posted there stepped forward and stopped them. "This is the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Outsiders are not allowed to enter without permission," one disciple said, his tone carrying a trace of arrogance. "My name is Ye Shi of Frost Snow Pavilion," Ye Shi replied calmly. "Your clan chief invited me as a guest." She produced the invitation and handed it to the disciple. The gate guard examined the invitation carefully. Once he verified it was genuine, he opened the gate and bowed an invitation. Pavilion Master Ye, please enter. Clan Chief Yu instructed that you may go directly to the main hall. He returned the invitation to Ye Shi, who nodded courteously and followed the disciple inside. The guard walked ahead, leading them through the clan grounds with measured courtesy. Soon they reached the main hall. As Ye Shi entered, she saw Yu Wanjin in the central seat, dressed in a dark blue robe, his black hair neatly combed, an air of composed vigor about him. This was the first time the two powers had met face to face, and Yu Wanjin studied Ye Shi as intently as she studied him. She had a formal, dignified bearing in her silver dress. Her blue eyes were calm, but beneath that calm lay a clear, confident pride. Pavilion Master Ye. Yu Wanjin rose and gestured toward the guest seat. Please sit. Clan Chief Yu. Ye Shi inclined her head as she sat. I've long admired your name, Clan Chief. I had hoped to visit but was pressed for time. I'm pleased to finally meet you. Ling Yuan remained behind Ye Shi, watching Yu Wanjin with a discreet intensity. Yu Wanjin smiled. I've heard of Pavilion Master Ye as well. At such a young age, you have established a force on a par with the upper three sects. His gaze flicked to Ling Yuan. Ye Shi returned the compliment with a polite smile. You flatter me, Clan Chief Yu. Yu Wanjin sat, and with a small wave, attendants brought out plates of delicately shaped pastries. These are a specialty of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Please try them. He took a cup of clear tea and sipped. Ye Shi picked up a pastry and tasted it with composed appreciation. They are excellent, a fitting specialty, she said. She placed the pastry down and fixed her blue eyes on Yu Wanjin. Clan Chief Yu, may I ask what matter brings you to invite me? If there is anything I can do to help, I will do my best. Her voice was clear and melodic, polite yet unambiguous. Yu Wanjin regarded her for a moment, noting the perfect etiquette and steady composure. He nodded slightly, acknowledging both her courtesy and her offer. Chapter 111, First Meeting with Yu Xiaogang. Yu Wanjin set his teacup down and looked at the woman in the guest seat. To be frank, he said, this invitation for Pavilion Master Ye to visit the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan was my second son Yu Xiaogang's suggestion. He's focused on spirit theory research. He's heard a few rumors about Pavilion Master Ye and has some questions he'd like to ask. He was polite, treating Ye Shi with respect. At that moment, footsteps sounded at the hall entrance. Ye Shi glanced up as a young man in simple clothes walked in, hands clasped behind his back. Father, he nodded, then turned to the guest. Pavilion Master Ye. Yu Xiaogang bowed slightly to his father, then to Ye Shi. Ye Shi inclined her head in return, but gave no sign she would speak. Xiaogang, Frost Snow Pavilion's Pavilion Master Ye is here. If you have questions, ask them, Yu Wanjin said, picking up his teacup again and sipping. Yu Xiaogang sat and fixed his gaze on Ye Shi. Pavilion Master Ye, I understand your spirit ring configuration is 100-year, 1,000-year, another 1,000-year, and a 10,000-year ring. Is that correct? Ye Shi nodded once and casually took a pastry, tasting it. Yes. I've been researching spirit theory for years, Yu Xiaogang continued softly, a trace of excitement in his voice. According to my calculations, there should be a limit to the number of spirit rings a person can absorb each time their spirit power reaches a bottleneck. But the rings you absorbed seem to have been gained by transcending your rank. How did you absorb spirit rings by transcending your rank? Ye Shi's eyelids lifted slightly as she regarded him. Then she turned to Yu Wanjin. Clan Chief Yu, if I don't give a satisfactory answer, are you saying we won't be allowed to leave the clan today? Yu Wanjin set his cup down and spoke in a sincere tone. Pavilion Master Ye, I give you my word as clan chief of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. Whether you answer or not, you will be sent back to Frost Snow Pavilion safely. Before Ye Shi could reply, Yu Xiaogang added, Please don't misunderstand. My research suggests forcibly absorbing rings by transcending one's rank is extremely harmful to the body. If Pavilion Master Ye is unwilling to explain, perhaps you could release your spirit for me to study. Maybe I could find something you're missing. Ye Shi looked at him with undisguised disdain in her pale blue eyes. Why should I tell you, or let you study my spirit? She asked coolly. And as for your claim that transcending your rank is harmful, I can tell you my body is in excellent condition. She waved a hand dismissively. Don't keep reciting your theories like mantras. A theory that's never been tested is just a theory. Her voice was composed, almost amused. If I remember correctly, one of your 10 great theories of spirit says, there are no useless spirits, only useless spirit masters. Even the weakest spirit, when cultivated to its extreme, will become powerful. She leaned forward and met Yu Xiaogang's eyes directly. You've been cultivating for decades and are still only a spirit grandmaster. Tell me, was your theory wrong, or are you the useless one? The words landed like cold water. Yu Xiaogang's fingers tightened involuntarily. His face darkened, anger flared in his chest. For a moment he seemed on the verge of saying something fierce, but he held himself back. Yu Yuanzhen's expression had also shifted. He glanced between his son and Yeshi, then closed his eyes and rested, his posture signaling he would not interfere. The clan's interests came first. Offending someone as talented and well-connected as Pavilion Master Ye for his son's sake was not something he wanted. My spirit power rank may not be high, Yu Xiaogang said through clenched teeth, but I've worked on spirit theory for decades. In terms of theory, if I claimed to be second, almost no one could claim first. Yeshi let out a soft, humorless chuckle. The sound grated on Yu Xiaogang's nerves like salt in a wound. The anger inside him burned hotter. He saw, without being told, that Yu Yuanzhen had decided to take no sides. The clan chief's calm disinterest made it clear he didn't want to risk offending the Frost Snow Pavilion or Yeshi. So Yu Xiaogang swallowed his pride and kept the fury to himself. Yeshi's eyes held no further courtesy. She didn't need to name names. Anyone familiar with the circles would know the Supreme Pontiff Bibi Dong had long since surpassed Yu Xiaogang, both in theoretical insight and in talent. Her amusement, and the unmistakable condescension behind it, said more than any rebuttal could. Chapter 112, Don't Humiliate Yourself. Yu Xiaogang waited a long time. When he realized Yeshi was content to nibble pastries and had no intention of answering him, his fingers tightened into fists. The irritation in his eyes, which had been restrained behind a veneer of civility, flared. He felt affronted, as if Yeshi had openly disrespected him. Still, he was not entirely blind with anger. He glanced toward Yu Yuanzhen, who sat in the chief's seat. Seeing Yu Yuanzhen with his eyes closed, appearing to rest and not intervening, Yu Xiaogang had to swallow his fury. He forced himself to sound composed. Pavilion Master Ye, as a guest of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, surely that behavior is rather impolite? He drew a breath, trying to steady himself, but his voice betrayed a sting. Polite? Yeshi set down the pastry, picked up the teacup beside her, drank, and then her blue eyes sharpened. What do you mean by polite? That I ate a pastry, or that I didn't answer your question? What is your position, that you lecture me on politeness? Yu Xiaogang snapped. It is out of respect for the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan that I called you Grandmaster. If I hadn't given the clan face, you wouldn't have even been entitled to see me. Yeshi pressed the teacup down on the table with a small, deliberate thud. Her tone carried an edge of cold steel that rang through the hall. At the sound of her words, Yu Yuanzhen, who had been pretending to rest, opened his eyes and looked toward her. His gaze met Ling Yuan's across the room. Yu Yuanzhen's expression was thoughtful, Ling Yuan's calm but guarded. The exchange was brief and full of unspoken meaning. Yu Xiaogang rose from his seat, fury obvious now. What about me? He demanded. Am I wrong? Yeshi's reply was slow and precise. Don't keep prattling about your 10 theories of spirit. How many people actually agree with them? As far as I know, you once served as an honorary elder at Spirit Hall and were close to the previous Holy Maiden there. She leaned forward, each sentence landing like a thrown stone. So tell me, how much of your so-called 10 theories of spirit is actually your own research? A cold smile curved her lips as she continued, eyes fixed on Yu Xiaogang. Years ago, you were to be wed to Liu Erlong from the Golden Triangle. On the eve of your wedding night, when you discovered Liu Erlong was a cousin, you ran. You abandoned her on what should have been the most sacred night of her life and left her to endure nearly 20 years of gossip. You preach as a scholar of spirit, yet your theories remain untested, mere speculation. As a man, you fled your marriage and left a woman to shoulder shame and whispers for your cowardice. Born the son of the clan chief, after decades of mediocrity, You publish a string of theories and become a laughingstock to the Spirit Master's world. You abandoned a bride and tarnished the name of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. If I were you, she said, blunt and unflinching, I would withdraw from public life. Better to live quietly in the mountains than to flounder in the clan and make a mockery of yourself. Step down. Don't humiliate yourself here. Yeshi finished and signaled with a small gesture that she was done speaking. She let her gaze fall away from him as if she would say no more. Her words struck Yu Xiaogang like knives. He felt his chest burn and his breath come fast. The anger he had barely contained surged up so violently his mouth filled with the metallic taste of blood. He forced it back down instead of spitting it out. The room blurred at the edges. His head lightened. But he forced himself to sit back down and bow his head in silence. Yuanzhen listened and watched with an expression that shifted through surprise, conflict, and helplessness. He wanted to defend Yu Xiaogang, but Yeshi had spoken nothing but facts, and there was nothing for him to say. In the end, he only sighed, low and resigned. Clan Chief Yu, Yeshi added, standing, if I offended you with my words, I ask your forgiveness. If there is nothing else, we will not press our stay in the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. We will return to Frost Snow Pavilion. She rose without waiting for a response and strode from the hall. Yuanzhen watched her leave for a moment, then gave a small, reluctant nod and remained silent. After she left, Yuanzhen stood from the chief's seat. He went to the front of the hall, paused as if collecting his thoughts, and then walked to the entrance. He looked up at the sky for a long time, his mind clouded with unsettled thoughts. Heaven Do City. On the bustling streets, Yeshi and Lingyuan walked side by side. Miss, wasn't that a bit disrespectful to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan? Lingyuan asked from a few steps behind her. Yeshi waved him off easily. It's fine. Her voice was calm, almost casual. Frost Snow Pavilion has never been particularly close to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. No need to worry. She didn't seem upset at all by the confrontation. Yu Xiaogang held little real power in the clan, so offending him carried little consequence, and Yuanzhen, focused only on revitalizing the clan, would not jeopardize that aim over a junior member's grievance. Lingyuan nodded and fell silent, following quietly behind her. They returned to Frost Snow Pavilion shortly after and went straight to the back hall instead of the main reception. At the door to her room, Yeshi gestured for Lingyuan to step back, then entered alone. She sat on the bed as Zhongmeng, her maid, came in carrying a fresh set of clothes she favored. Yeshi reached for them without a word, her expression composed, calm on the surface, but the day's exchange had left a clear mark on everyone in that hall. Chapter 113. Meeting Ning Fengji in the palace. After Zhongmeng placed the clothes by Yeshi's bed, she stood respectfully to the side and waited for further instructions. Zhongmeng, go find Shilong and tell him to come with me to the Tiando Royal Palace later, Yeshi said, waving her hand. Zhongmeng bowed and slipped silently out of the room. Once she was gone, Yeshi picked up the clothes and began to change. 10 minutes later, she emerged in fresh garments and headed for the main hall of Frost Snow Pavilion. Shilong came forward to greet her as she entered. Young miss. He bowed slightly and fell into step at her side. All right, let's go to the Tiando Royal Palace. They walked through the bustling streets and reached the palace gates, then passed through and made their way to the residence where Shui Qinghe received guests. Shui Qinghe sat on the main seat, calmly sipping a cup of 7 treasure glazed tile tea. On the guest seat to his left, Ning Fengji smiled gently as he chatted intermittently with him. Teacher, is there something you needed to discuss with me? Ning Fengji asked. Shui Qinghe set down his cup and returned the look with respectful eyes. Nothing in particular. I just haven't seen you in a while, and the 7 treasure glazed tile tea has matured. I thought you might like to try some. Ning Fengji shook his head slightly, though the smile on his refined face did not waver. Thank you for thinking of me, teacher. I've been busy lately, which is why I haven't come to the 7 treasure glazed tile school. Before they could speak further, footsteps sounded at the palace entrance. Both Shui Qinghe and Ning Fengji turned to see Ye Shi and Shilong entering. Neither seemed surprised. If anyone in Heaven Do City could enter the Crown Prince's palace unannounced, it was Ye Shi. Xiaoxi, you're here. Shui Qinghe stood and walked over to meet her. Shui Qinghe. Ye Shi returned his greeting with a faint smile, then turned her clear gaze to Ning Fengji and to Chen Xin, who stood quietly behind him. Schoolmaster Ning, Senior Chen. You're here too. Ning Fengji inclined his head in greeting. Shui Qinghe guided Ye Shi to a guest seat on the right. We brought some 7-treasure glazed tile tea for Qinghe. Had we known you were coming, I would have prepared more, Ning Fengji said with a smile. His eyes, however, kept flicking to Shi Long, standing behind Ye Shi. It was odd. Ye Shi usually traveled with Ling Yuan, so the unfamiliar companion drew a few extra glances before his attention returned to his tea. Chen Xin remained with his eyes closed, showing no intention of speaking. Shui Qinghe, smiling, reached out and gently stroked Ye Shi's silver hair. Xiaoxi prefers fruit juices and the like more than tea, he said naturally. Ning Fengji's eyes narrowed for a moment, then relaxed. From Shui Qinghe's manner and the easy intimacy between him and Ye Shi, Ning Fengji realized their relationship might be unusual. He retracted his gaze and, as if nothing had caught his attention, lifted his teacup and took a sip. It's only natural for someone as young as Pavilion Master Ye not to like tea, he said in a warm, spring-like tone. After a palace maid brought some refreshments for Ye Shi, Shui Qinghe returned to his seat. Ye Shi's eyes scanned around the hall until they settled on Chen Xin with a sharp, earnest look. Senior Chen Xin, I've heard your swordsmanship is among the best in the Spirit Master world. I know a bit about swordplay, too. If you have time, may I ask for your guidance? Chen Xin opened his eyes at once. He appraised Ye Shi briefly, then looked to Ning Fengji as if seeking his approval. Ning Fengji set down his teacup and nodded slightly. Uncle Jian, since Pavilion Master Ye wishes for instruction, please give her some guidance when you have time. Very well. Chen Xin's reply was brief. Then he closed his eyes and resumed resting. Many thanks, Senior Chen Xin, Ye Shi said politely. When their conversation wound down, Shui Qing leaned forward with a faint tenderness in his voice. Xiaoxi, is there something you came to the palace to discuss with me? Yes, Qinghe, I did come to see you. Ye Shi's gaze drifted to Ning Fengji as she spoke, making her intent clear. Ning Fengji rose without hurry. Qinghe, if you and Pavilion Master Ye have matters to discuss, Uncle Jian and I will return to the 7-treasure glazed tile school. We have a few trivial affairs that need tending. Shui Qing stood and came with Ning Fengji to the palace entrance. Teacher, I'll see you off. He followed them out and only stopped once Ning Fengji had passed through the gates. Shui Qinghe watched his retreating figure for a long moment before turning back. Only after Ning Fengji's figure had vanished into the distance did the crown prince return to the palace and sit down beside Ye Shi. The doors closed behind them. A faint golden light gathered in Shui Qinghe's hand, and with a soft wave, his appearance shifted back to his usual self. Xiaoxi, did something happen? Qian Renshu asked, her pale golden eyes taking on a serious expression. Sister, nothing major, Ye Shi replied quickly. I only went to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan this morning. Seeing the seriousness in Ye Shi's face, Qian Renshu gestured for her to speak, and Ye Shi recounted everything that had happened at the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan in detail. As she listened, Qian Renshui's tension eased. It really isn't a big deal. We don't need to worry too much about the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan, she continued. We have people embedded there. More precisely, she amended, they're people of that woman. Ye Shi nodded, thoughtful. She immediately knew who Qian Renshui meant. Among their circle, there was only one who would be referred to like that, the current Supreme Pontiff, Bibi Dong. The person on our side in the clan is Yu Luomian, the second family head, right? Ye Shi asked, though she sounded certain. Yes, it's him, Qian Renshui confirmed. A long time ago, Yu Luomian defected to her. If nothing unexpected happens, what happened at the clan today will probably reach her within a few days. Qian Renshui crossed her arms and spoke with cool detachment. If so, then we can let it be. Ye Shi hummed softly, a hint of thoughtfulness in her clear blue eyes. By the way, Xiaoxi, are you really going to ask Chen Xin for sword guidance? Chen Xin is a sword Douluo, yes, but grandfather's sword arts are at least as good, if not better, Ye Shi said. Guidance is a side matter. What I really want is to add more bargaining chips. I did practice grandfather's sword techniques a while ago, But after leaving the Hall of Offerings, I've hardly had reason to use them. Using the pretext of seeking instruction to gain leverage is a sensible move, she added calmly. Yeshi wasn't overly confident about sword arts in general. Among opponents of equal realm, she could overpower them with her current strength, and against stronger foes, she rarely needed to fight directly because she always brought bodyguards. That left her with fine technique but little practical use for it. If you put it like that, it really is a win-win, Qian Renshui said, her eyes brightening. Her gaze flicked briefly toward the wing where Emperor Shuiye resided, then toward the 7-treasure glazed tile school. A faint smile spread across her refined face. Yes, exactly. Yeshi returned the smile. Xiaoxi, are you free this afternoon? If you are, let's go shopping in Heaven Dew City. Crown Prince Shui Qingye will pick up the tab. Qian Renshui leaned closer and asked softly, Of course I'm free. Without much thought, Yeshi agreed. Qian Renshui rose, a faint golden light crossing her features, and she shifted her appearance into that of Crown Prince Shui Qingye. Once I've arranged a few things, we'll leave, she said, moving toward the palace doors. The doors opened, and the Crown Prince stepped out to make the necessary arrangements while Ye Shi remained in the hall, waiting quietly. Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. In the clan's solemn main hall, Yu Yuanjin sat at the head of the table. To his left stood Yu Luomian, the clan's second family head. The atmosphere was tight. Big brother, Yu Luomian said earnestly. About what happened today, we should give Frost Snow Pavilion an explanation. Ultimately, it was our clan's problem. Their method for absorbing spirit rings beyond one's realm is their own business. It's no surprise they didn't teach Xiaogang the technique. Xiaogang's idea of dissecting their spirit and spirit rings was reckless. No wonder they stormed off. Right now, we're already openly at odds with the Spirit Hall, privately feuding with Ning Fengji of the 7-treasure glazed tile school, and our ties with the Heaven Dou royal family are lukewarm at best. Now we've alienated Frost Snow Pavilion. The situation is terrible for our clan. Yuanzhen rested his hand on his head and spoke evenly. Luomian, why don't we make a show of deference to the Spirit Hall, at least superficially? As for Frost Snow Pavilion, it's not insurmountable. A few gifts and some proper apologies will turn a big problem into a small one into nothing. It'll blow over. Our clan is slipping. We need to halt the decline first, then find ways to revive it. Yu Luomian considered this, then ventured another suggestion. Yuan Zhen, however, shook his head decisively. A dragon is still a dragon. We won't become a dog for anyone, even on the surface. I will handle the Frost Snow Pavilion matter myself, he added. As for stopping our decline, the only immediate solution I can think of is Yu Tianheng and Yu Tianxin. With their talent, becoming titled Douluo shouldn't be difficult. If we can raise 2 Douluo in one family, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan's decline would be solved. There was an unguarded emotion in Yuanzhen's voice as he said their names. Yu Luomian lowered his head, silent for a long moment. He thought to himself, stubborn and inflexible. If you don't change, you won't be able to lift up the clan, nor will Yu Tianheng and Yu Tianxin. He looked up slowly and fixed Yu Yuanjin with a long, searching look. Chapter 115, Delivering Messages. When Yu Yuanzhen caught Yu Luomian looking at him, he gave him nothing more than a cool, passing glance and returned his attention to the table. Yu Luomian stood up and spoke to him at the head of the hall. Big brother, since you already have a plan, I won't say anything more. I'm leaving first. With that, he stepped out of the hall. Yuanzhen watched him go, merely nodding once without comment. Instead of returning to his residence, Yu Luomian left the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan altogether. He walked out onto the busy street, the cries of vendors rising on both sides, and moved purposefully in a single direction until he stopped in front of a small, secluded courtyard. He opened the gate and went inside. In the courtyard room, he sat at a desk, took out paper and brush, and carefully recorded everything that had happened in the clan that day. When he finished, he retrieved a carrier pigeon used for sending messages, affixed the note, and released the bird. Once it disappeared into the sky, he clasped his hands behind his back and left the courtyard, heading back toward the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. On the other side of town, Ye Shi and Shui Qinghe walked side by side down a bustling avenue. Behind them, Shilong trailed half a step back, burdened with bags of various sizes and keeping silent. Xiaoxi, there's a clothing shop over there. Let's take a look, Shui Qinghe said, nodding toward a nearby store. Xiaoxi agreed, and they walked in together. Shilong kept to his place just behind them, eyes fixed on the growing load in his hands, a look of quiet puzzlement about him. If his memory served, he was an elder in the Spirit Hall, a titular elder of Frost Snow Pavilion, and a titled Douluo assigned to guard the young lord. How had he ended up as a servant carrying shopping bags? Still, he moved promptly and never more than half a step behind Shui Qinghe and Xiaoxi. Inside the boutique, the two scanned the racks. Shui Qinghe frowned after a quick sweep. Nothing immediately appealed. Xiaoxi continued to look around, but this shop didn't have anything that stood out. "Is there anything we can help you with?" a staff member asked, stepping forward with a practiced smile and taking in the expensive clothes the pair wore. "Do you have rain silk brocade?" Shui Qinghe asked. "I'd like to have some outfits customized for her." He gestured to Xiaoxi. The attendant examined her closely and answered, "We do carry rain silk brocade. It is a bit pricey, though." "Price is not an issue," Shui Qinghe cut in, waving the objection away. He led Xiaoxi to the sitting area. "What style would you like?" "I want a palace-style long dress, mainly silver, not too ornate. Use gold and silver thread as accents. Simple, not flashy, but elegant and grand," Xiaoxi said. "Can you do that?" Shui Qinghe asked softly, his gaze still combing the shop. "Yes, we can," the attendant replied brightly. They studied Xiaoxi for a few moments, then went to the counter to draft a quick sketch. Soon they returned with a design. "Please take a look. If anything needs changing, we'll adjust it." Xiaoxi pointed out several small details. "Change this here, and this part over here." The staff made 3 or 4 revisions, and when the design met her approval, she nodded. "Make this one to those specifications." "Then make another in light gold with a similar style," Shui Qinghe added after a moment's thought. He produced a gold Douluo card and handed it to the attendant. "How long will it take?" "For a custom order, about 10 days, the staff said, waiting for confirmation before swiping the card. "Once they're ready, send them to Frost Snow Pavilion," Shui Qinghe instructed. The staff swiped the card and returned it respectfully. They left the shop with the shopkeeper bowing them out. The two resumed their leisurely walk through Heaven-Do City, and the bundles in Shilong's arms multiplied as the afternoon wore on. By the time dusk fell, they had finally stopped. "It's late," Shui Qinghe said, checking the time. "Let's head back." "When we have time, we can come out again," Xiaoxi said, stretching. "Shall we go back to Frost Snow Pavilion first, or to the Imperial Palace?" he asked. "Back to Frost Snow Pavilion first. I'll return to the Imperial Palace on my own later," Xiaoxi replied. Qinghe smiled and snapped his fingers. He and Xiaoxi set off toward Frost Snow Pavilion, with Shilong keeping dutifully to his place behind them. Chapter 116. Battle against Dust Heart Frost Snow Pavilion. In an antique room, Shui Qinghe and Ye Shi lay side by side on a plush bed. After Shilong set down the things he had been carrying, he quietly left the room. "When are you planning to go to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School?" Shui Qinghe asked softly, propped against the pillows and watching Ye Shi. "Tomorrow, I think," Ye Shi replied. "There's nothing at the pavilion that needs my personal attention right now. It's a good time to go and find Chen Xin." She stretched back across the bed, their gazes met and both smiled. After a little while, Shui Qinghe sat up, gathered the items he'd purchased, and packed his belongings into his spirit tool. He nodded to Ye Shi and left the room, heading for the Tiando Royal Palace. Ye Shi closed her eyes and soon drifted into sleep. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the window. Ye Shi opened her eyes, checked the time, and sat up. "Young miss, are you awake?" Zhongmeng's voice came gently from outside the door. Come in." The maid entered carrying toiletries and helped Ye Shi wash and dress. Zhongmeng produced a set of clothes from the wardrobe and offered them. Ye Shi waved her hand. "Not the long dress, the black one." She was going to the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School today to refine her swordsmanship with Chen Xin. Long skirts would get in the way. Zhongmeng handed her a practical black outfit instead. Dressed, Ye Shi stepped toward Ling Yuan's room. Through the doorway, she saw Ling Yuan sitting by the window, delicately enjoying a cup of hot tea. Yishi motioned. Ling Yuan set the cup down and followed, staying a half step behind as they left Frost Snow Pavilion together for the school. At the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School's main hall, Ning Fengji sat on the principal seat, expression contemplative. To his left and right sat Chen Xin and Gu Rong. Fengji, Rongrong has been away a long time. Why don't I go bring her back? Gu Rong asked. What if she meets trouble outside? She's a support system spirit grandmaster. Danger could happen, Chen Xin added with a slight nod. Ning Fengji smiled and shook his head. Shrek Academy, where Rongrong is studying, is safe. The head there is Flender, a former member of the Golden Triangle and a spirit saint. There's no need to worry. Gu Rong bristled. A spirit saint? Can he really teach her as well as we can? Better to bring her back and let Chen Xin and me instruct her properly. Ning Fengji's gaze flicked between them. He thought of how Rongrong had been pampered, partly by their indulgence, but he kept the criticism to himself and only smiled. Gu Rong, reading the expression, fell silent. Ning Fengji's attitude made it clear. For now, he had no intention of summoning Ning Rongrong home. Just then, the gate disciple stepped in and knelt. Sect Master, Pavilion Master, Yi of Frost Snow Pavilion has arrived with Senior Ling Yuan. Thank you, I'll go meet them, Ning Fengji said, rising. He, Chen Xin, and Gu Rong walked to the school entrance. Ye Shi stood at the gate in practical black attire, hands folded in a respectful posture. Ling Yuan remained quietly behind her. Ning Fengji approached and gestured politely. Pavilion Master Ye, my apologies for not coming out sooner. Ning Sect Master, you are too polite. I'm here to see Senior Chen Xin, Ye Shi said with a faint smile, glancing at Chen Xin beside her. The practice area has been prepared, Ning Fengji said, leading them across the compound to an open training ground. This space should be large enough for Uncle Sword to instruct your sword techniques, Ning Fengji said to Ye Shi with a small bow. Thank you, Sect Master Ning, Ye Shi replied, then stepped forward into the clearing. Chen Jin halted a short distance away and asked, Did you bring a sword? A long sword materialized in Chen Xin's hand. Ye Shi simply reached into her spirit sea and drew forth the slaughter sword. Its blade caught the light, emitting a cold, blade-like gleam. Chen Xin's eyes shone when he saw it. That sword is extraordinary. From its look alone, he could tell it was no ordinary weapon. Though his own blade was fine, compared to the slaughter sword, it felt like scrap beside gold. Ning Fengji paused and looked toward Ling Yuan. Senior Ling Yuan, why don't we go to the main hall and sit for a while? Ling Yuan inclined her head slightly. I'll stay here and watch. Master Ning, you two may go. Ning Fengji nodded and led Gu Rong back toward the hall. Chen Xin remained, and the air between him and Ye Shi shifted into the focused quiet of training. First, show me how you hold it, Chen Xin instructed. Ye Shi adopted her stance and let the slaughter sword rest at her side. Her posture was measured, each breath controlled. Chen Xin watched for a beat, then moved into a relaxed demonstration, smooth, precise footwork, the way the sword was angled in a cut. Your foundation is solid, Chen Xin said, but your drive lacks a certain refinement. Your strikes are powerful, but they waste motion. Control your center, and the sword will follow with more intent. Ye Shi adjusted, lowering her shoulders and tightening the connection between breath and movement. She unleashed a series of cuts, cleaner, more economical. The air hummed where the blade passed, and Chen Xin's expression grew more approving. You've got potential, he said. Keep your focus. I will correct the small errors, and you practice them until they feel natural. They moved through forms and corrections for a time, the rhythm of teacher and student settling into place. On the sidelines, Ling Yuan watched with a composed expression, occasionally lifting her teacup but not interrupting. Occasionally, Ning Fengji's voice carried faintly from the main hall, but otherwise, the training occupied the clearing. As they worked, the slaughter sword's thin chill traced neat arcs through the air, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Chen Xin's instructions grew more exacting, and Ye Shi's responses sharper. Around them, day progressed, and the school grounds held their steady, attentive hush. The session was just beginning. Both teacher and pupil felt the press of higher skill ahead. Outside the ring of practice, the world was calm, but in the movements and the watching eyes, there was the promise of something far more turbulent to come. Chapter 117, The Young Generation Can Be King. Thank you for Schoolmaster Ning's kindness. But my young miss is still young, and if I don't watch her, I get a little worried. Ling Yuan shook her head gently, politely declining Ning Fengji's offer. Ning Fengji nodded and had several disciples bring over a few chairs. In the open courtyard, Chen Xin and Ye Shi faced each other, each holding a long sword. You go first, Chen Xin said. He held his sword in one hand, the other tucked behind his back, projecting an air of supreme confidence. At his signal, Ye Shi moved forward and swung her slaughter sword down at him. Chen Xin lifted his long sword to block. A sharp clang rang out. When the blades met, the long sword in Chen Xin's hand snapped in two, and the blade flew out, embedding itself in the ground nearby. Ye Shi took a few steps back, feigning an innocent look. The slaughter sword was a divine artifact. No matter how fine Chen Xin's long sword had been, it was still an ordinary weapon and could not match the slashing power of the slaughter sword. Chen Xin stared at the broken hilt in his hand, momentarily stunned. He had known Ye Shi's sword was extraordinary, but he had not expected one strike to sever his weapon outright. This was not a failing of technique so much as an overwhelming difference in arms. He looked up at Ye Shi's expression and thought for a moment, then released his spirit, 7 kill sword. I'll suppress my spirit power to match yours, he said. No spirit abilities, only sword technique. Senior Chen Xin, then I'll continue, Ye Shi replied, spinning the slaughter sword so its edge pointed at him. Do as you like. No need to hold back, Chen Xin answered, his eyes serious. Ye Shi struck again, the slaughter sword screaming as it sliced through the air. The 7 kill sword in Chen Xin's hand met it, and the two blades rang together. As the power from his spirit flowed through the sword, a flash of surprise crossed Chen Xin's face. The force he felt faintly exceeded Spirit Emperor level and had entered the Spirit Saint rank. The surprise was brief, but Chen Xin's mind was unsettled. Even allowing his spirit power to be reduced to Ye Shi's level, his physical strength remained that of a peak Douluo at rank 96. If an ordinary person at the same rank had faced the power Ye Shi displayed, they would likely have been no match. Only a very few could possibly contend with her. Their swords met again and again, the clanging of steel unceasing. Chen Xin's movements carried a killing intent. There was no flourish, only pure, exquisite technique. Ye Shi's sword work, though not as refined as Chen Xin's, was likewise mastered. No showy moves, every strike aimed at vital points. She watched Chen Xin as she fought. With her photographic memory, she recorded each of his moves and folded the useful ones into her own repertoire. At one of their clashes, the force from the slaughter sword drove Chen Xin back a few steps. He thought to himself, what a terrifying talent! Yet his eyes showed nothing but appreciation. From the duel, he could clearly see how far Ye Shi leapt ahead of her peers. Her talent was unlike anything he had seen. Your talent is something I've never seen before. From the strength you're showing, you're at the very top of this younger generation, Chen Xin said aloud as he fought. To call you king among the younger generation would not be an exaggeration. In my father's generation, there were 2 people hailed as the 2 peaks, 2 insurmountable summits in the Spirit Master world, he continued. Among today's young generation, with your strength, you could also be called an insurmountable mountain. Every word was praise without reserve. Although Heaven Dew City already knew Ye Shi was strong among her peers, very few knew the full extent of her power. Now that Chen Xin had seen it himself, he felt acutely how vast the gap was between her and other prodigies. Senior Chen Xin, you flatter me, Ye Shi replied modestly, though a trace of arrogance still gleamed in her eyes. They raised their swords and moved in near-perfect synchronization, blades meeting constantly. During the exchange, Chen Xin occasionally offered pointers, letting Ye Shi adjust and correct small flaws immediately. At the same time, Ling Yuan, Ning Fengji, and Gu Rong sat on the chairs with their gazes quietly fixed on the duel. Uncle Gu, this is the first time I've heard Uncle Jian praise someone so highly, Ning Fengji said softly. King among the younger generation. That's a high evaluation. Even Tang Hao, known as the youngest titled Douluo on the continent, might not earn such praise, Gu Rong murmured, eyes grave. He's right. The girl truly could be called a king among the younger generation, an astonishing talent. Ning Fengji watched Ye Shi with a faint smile. Gu Rong's expression was solemn, Although his spirit rank was lower than Chen Xin's, as a titled Douluo, his judgment carried weight. From what he had seen, Chen Xin had not been exaggerating. Ling Yuan's gaze swept over them and then withdrew calmly. She had been by Yexi's side for many years and knew her strength extended beyond what was being shown now. In particular, Yexi's slaughter domain, powerful as it was, had not been used openly since she acquired it. Chapter 118, Half-Step Conception. As Yixi and Chen Xin continued to trade blows, Yexi felt herself falling into something profound, a glimpse of concept. The slaughter sword in her hand moved as if it were part of her own arm, responding to a will deeper than thought. It trembled in her grip, answering the current state she had slipped into. With each strike, Yexi became more like an unstoppable blade. Every movement carried the air of inevitable perfection. Only the sharp ring of steel meeting steel filled the arena. The slaughter sword met the seven-kill sword again and again. The two long blades glinted coldly as they rubbed together midair, throwing off brief sparks. A faint, almost imperceptible surprise crossed Chen Xin's face as he watched Yexi. This, he thought, was touching the threshold of concept. When the slaughter sword came at him again, Chen Xin scarcely hesitated. He abandoned offense and shifted entirely to defense, deliberately giving Yexi space to comprehend what she had found. Freed from having to overcome his attacks, her strikes grew sharper. The speed of her swordplay accelerated. There were no flashy techniques now, only the simplest, most fundamental sword moves. But in their simplicity lay the sense of distilling complexity into natural perfection. For a long while, the clash of swords was incessant. Then, gradually, Yexi's tempo slowed. She felt something achingly close, a presence just beyond reach, an indescribable, incomprehensible threshold. That tiny gap felt like an abyss, immovable and impenetrable. The profound sensation faded, and Yexi drew back, the slaughter sword stilled in her hand. "Still just a little short?" Chen Xin asked, a hint of regret in his tone. He had hoped she might step into concept as he had, but though she had the seed of it, she had not crossed over. Strictly speaking, she was in a half-step concept state. "Yes, a little short," Yexi replied. "I felt I could have reached it with one more step, but there was a chasm I couldn't cross." She withdrew the slaughter sword, turning her azure eyes to Chen Xin. Curiosity and a flash of yearning showed in them. "Senior Chen Xin, what was that profound feeling I just experienced?" "The state you touched was the threshold of concept," Chen Xin said, sheathing the seven-kill sword. "Swordsmanship has 4 broad levels: sword force, sword light, sword chi, and sword intent. Very few understand concept these days, and even fewer actually reach it. It's normal you didn't recognize it." Yexi nodded, absorbing the explanation. "What level was I at before this, sword light or sword chi?" Chen Xin measured her with a quick, appraising look. "Your talent is the greatest I have seen. When we first began, you were roughly at half-step sword chi. As we exchanged blows, you rose rapidly to full sword chi and then grazed the concept level." He continued to study her as he spoke, and for a moment his expression softened. If not for her status, he would have asked her to become his disciple then and there. But Yexi was master of the Frost Snow Pavilion, a position equivalent to a sect master among the upper 3 sects. To propose discipleship now would almost certainly invite refusal. The thought stayed inside him. "As I said," Chen Xin added while turning toward Ningfengji, "talent alone won't take you all the way. To truly reach concept, you need more than skill. You need a deep grasp of the Tao of the sword." Yexi felt Chen Xin's words touch something in her mind. An insight flickered and slipped away as if just beyond her fingers. She couldn't quite seize it. When Chen Xin rejoined Ningfengji, Yexi gathered herself and moved toward Ling Yuan. Arriving before Ling Yuan, she bowed slightly to Chen Xin. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior Chen Xin. I have some matters to attend to and cannot stay long at the 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. I will return to visit you another time." Chen Xin only nodded in reply. Ningfengji rose to see her out and accompanied her to the school's entrance before turning back. Watching Yexi's retreating figure, he glanced at Chen Xin and asked softly, "Uncle Sword, you fought with her. What do you think of her?" Chen Xin's answer was brief but heavy with meaning. "Extraordinary hardly begins to describe her." Ningfengji repeated the words quietly to himself as he went back inside, a contemplative look in his eyes as if some plan or possibility was forming. Meanwhile, in Spirit City's Supreme Pontiff Palace, a carrier eagle streaked in and landed before Gui Mei. The bird brought a letter. Gui Mei took it and hurried at once to the Supreme Pontiff's study. He knocked gently on the door and announced in a respectful, slightly hoarse voice, "Your Holiness the Supreme Pontiff, a carrier eagle has arrived with news from Heaven Do City." Sitting in her study handling political affairs, Bibi Dong gradually looked up toward the doorway when she heard Gui Mei's voice. "Come in." The study door opened and Gui Mei entered carrying a letter. After bowing to Bibi Dong, she set it on the desk. Bibi Dong opened and scanned it. The letter was not from Qian Renshui or Ye Xi, but from Yu Luomian of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. It recounted the events of the previous day at that clan. Bibi Dong read to the end with an unreadable calm, though her eyes narrowed and an odd emotion flickered through them. "You may withdraw," she said, waving a hand lightly. "Yes, Supreme Pontiff." Gui Mei bowed again and left. Once the door closed, a ripple of spirit power passed through Bibi Dong's hand, and the letter in front of her disintegrated into dust. "Why would you provoke that black sesame Tang Yuan for no reason?" she murmured, staring toward the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan. From Yu Luomian's account, she already knew what had happened there, including Ye Shi's insults to Yu Xiaogang. Outwardly, she appeared composed, her voice and expression unchanged, but the aura she now emitted was unlike her usual sacred, inviolate presence. There was a dangerous edge to it. "Yu Xiaogang, I hope you haven't utterly enraged the black sesame Tang Yuan," she muttered, then bent to pick up a brush and paper and began to write. If any other member of the Spirit Hall had been provoked, Bibi Dong could handle it, mere inconvenience at worst. But Ye Shi, the black sesame Tang Yuan, was a special problem. Compared with others in the Spirit Hall, Ye Shi's attitude toward Bibi Dong was superficially milder, but only on the surface. In secret, Ye Shi had even shown killing intent toward Bibi Dong's disciple Hu Liena. If truly provoked, who knew what Ye Shi might do? And if she acted, she would likely do so indirectly, by borrowing another's hand to kill. Tang Hao was a typical example. When she finished the letter, Bibi Dong rose and left her study. Frost Snow Pavilion. In the grand, solemn main hall, Ye Shi sat in the central seat, one hand propping her head. Her silver hair fell loosely, her azure eyes full of thought. Chen Qin's advice and a flash of light from the 7-treasure glazed tile school kept nagging at her. She felt she had overlooked something important, though she could not place it. Ling Yuan stood behind her quietly, not wanting to disturb her. Little by little, a memory flickered again, and this time, Ye Shi seized it. "Slaughter Angel," she whispered. "Slaughter Sword, slaughter." She drew a long breath and sank her consciousness into her spiritual sea. It was black-red. In its center floated the 8-winged angel spirit, its 4 pairs of wings beating and sending a murderous aura through the air. Beside the slaughter angel hovered the slaughter sword. Seeing them, Ye Shi's eyes lit with a new understanding. Slaughter angel, slaughter sword, they should bloom in slaughter, she thought. Perhaps I can comprehend my own sword intent through slaughter. But if I slaughter indiscriminately just to cultivate sword intent, what would distinguish me from an evil soul master? Her consciousness withdrew from the spiritual sea as the thought persisted. Soon she settled on a place that suited her purpose perfectly, the Asura god's slaughter city. It was the right arena, decisive, absolute. But with her current strength, the journey would be risky. I should go to Slaughter City, she decided, but not yet. I need to grow stronger first. She rose and walked toward the back hall. Ling Yuan, seeing the expression on her face, asked quietly, "Young miss, you seem to have gained some insight." Ye Shi nodded. "Yes, I have a clue. I just don't know if it will work." Ling Yuan asked no more and followed silently. Deeper in the back hall, they found 2 wicker chairs where Douluo and Ghost Leopard lounged, basking in the sun and sipping clear tea. "Young miss, Pavilion Master." "You're back," Douluo and Ghost Leopard said in unison as they straightened. "I've been back for a while," Ye Shi answered. "I was just thinking about some things in the main hall." She stopped before Ghost Leopard and spoke softly, a faint smile on her face. "Elder Ghost Leopard, if you have time, please guide Tianyao, Du Guyan, and Ye Lingling in their cultivation." Seeing her smile, Ghost Leopard stood immediately. Young miss, rest assured, starting tomorrow, I will properly guide Tianyao, Duguyan, and Ye Lingling in their cultivation, he said, thumping his chest with a confident tone. Chapter 120. I'll take you with me when I practice Ghost. Leopard tapped his chest in assurance, and Yeshi couldn't help but nod. Then I'll trouble you, Elder Ghost Leopard. She smiled at Dugubo and stepped toward the deeper halls. Walking along the bluestone path, she soon reached the courtyard where Tianyao, Duguyan, Ye Lingling, and the others usually trained. Yeshi took a seat in a pavilion and watched. Tianyao and Duguyan were sparring fiercely, while Ye Lingling sat cross-legged nearby, lost in meditation. Maybe because Ye Lingling was present, Tianyao and Duguyan held nothing back. Each attack and defense was given in full. The outcome is obvious, Yeshi said, her voice clear as a bell. If Duguyan wants to beat young Miss Tianyao one-on-one, she can only do it with Bilin snake poison. Without it, there's almost no chance. Lingyuan stood quietly behind Yeshi, nodding as she explained. She made a small sign to a maid, who bowed to Yeshi and Lingyuan before slipping away. A few minutes later, the maid returned with a tray of pastries and fruits, Yeshi's favorites, and set it before her. Yeshi's eyes brightened, and she gestured to Lingyuan with a small smile. Lingyuan, sit and eat some too. Okay, young miss. Lingyuan sat beside Yeshi, and the two watched the sparring while sharing the food. Time passed. The match ended with Tianyao the victor. Ye Lingling opened her eyes from meditation and, seeing the two were injured, released her spirit to heal them. In moments, their wounds closed. When she withdrew her spirit, the three of them, Tianyao, Duguyan, and Ye Lingling, came over together. Young miss, Xiao-Shi. They called to her in turn. Eat, Tianyao urged, setting the tray in the middle. The group sat, Tianyao opposite Yeshi, Ye Lingling beside Tianyao, and Duguyan at Yeshi's side. Starting tomorrow, Ghost Leopard will come and guide your cultivation, Yeshi said softly. Tianyao's eyes lit up. She knew Ghost Leopard's strength. Having him as a mentor was a rare boon. Duguyan murmured the name and blinked, recalling what she had heard from her grandfather, Dugubo, about the man. Ye Lingling merely nodded, aloof as always. The others were used to her distant manner. Tianyao, you must train hard, Yeshi said, standing and stretching. If you're strong enough, I'll take you with me next time I go out for a trial. Yeshi's gaze on Tianyao was serious. She planned to go to Slaughter City. Bringing Tianyao would be possible, but only if Tianyao had the strength to survive such a place. Slaughter City was a place of both danger and opportunity. Those who passed its trials could gain the Slaughter God domain, a domain that greatly amplified one's power. But enter unprepared, and one could be trapped there forever. How strong is strong enough? Tianyao asked, her expression solemn. At least Spirit King, Yeshi replied. My next trial is in about 2 years. You need to reach Spirit King within that time. Duguyan looked at Yeshi with hopeful eyes, but Yeshi shook her head gently before Duguyan could speak. Yan, the place I'm going is dangerous. Even I might not get out. I can't take you. It's not suitable for everyone. She gave Duguyan an apologetic look. The reason she wanted Tianyao to come was partly their closeness and partly pragmatic. Once Tianyao reached Spirit King, she'd have a chance to protect herself, and the boost from the Slaughter God domain would be invaluable to her type of spirit. It would be foolish to send someone unready into Slaughter City. Besides, Yeshi continued, not everyone would benefit from the Slaughter God domain. For example, Ye Lingling's spirit is 9-heart begonia. It's a healing spirit with no offensive power. Even if she obtained the Slaughter God domain, it wouldn't help her much. She wouldn't trade away her healing for brute force. I understand, Duguyan said, picking up a pastry and managing a faint smile. She accepted Yeshi's decision without complaint. Yeshi had explained her reasons, and Duguyan received them calmly, showing no real disappointment.